Greetings, Ian from RTO here. Welcome to another edition of Battle of the Debuts. Today we're going back 42 years. This really makes me feel old when it says that, 42 years, because I can remember this time very well. So we're going back to right at the very start of the new wave of British heavy metal. And our two bands today are two bands that released albums within months of each other, one being in April and the other in October of 1980, and it is Def Leppard and Diamond Head, two of the pioneering bands of the new wave of heavy metal, which I remember very, very well. So today, as usual, we will start with the band that brought their album out first, and in this case it was Def Leppard. Def Leppard, of course, were formed in 1977 by school friends Rick Savage, Pete Willis and Tony Kennin. Their first band was called Atomic Mass. Joe Elliott joined in a chance meeting with Pete Willis after missing a bus. It was Joe that came up with the name Def Leppard. Kennin said drop the E, drop the A and just call it Def Leppard. In 1978 Steve Clark joined them, and his audition was to play the whole of Freebird by Lynyrd Skynyrd, and he got the gig. But Tony Kennin left abruptly. They brought in a chap called, I think, let's have a look, his name's down here somewhere, Frank Noon, to record that EP, but he was replaced by a 15-year-old drummer called Rick Allen, and the rest is history, of course. So, their debut album, released on the 14th of March 1980, On Through the Night. The performing band, sort of a really good lineup this was. Joe Elliott on lead vocals and backing vocals, Steve Clark on the lead and rhythm guitars and backing vocals, Pete Willis on guitars and backing vocals, Rick Savage on the bass guitar and backing vocals, Mr. Rick Allen on the drums and backing vocals, and the producer was Mr. Tom Allen, who's produced many a fine band, including Judas Priest. So the first track on Through the Night is called Rock Brigade. Still remains one of my favourite songs by Def Leppard. Then brilliant riffs at the beginning, and the great guitar work between Pete Willis and Steve Clark is fantastic. Next track is Hello America. Even at this young age, their harmonies were brilliant. It's a stunning track. Love the rawness and the ferociousness of this one. Sorrow is a Woman. I love the guitar work between Pete Willis and Steve Clark on this. Even at that young age, these two guys, who are sadly no longer with us, were brilliant. Great young guitarists. It Could Be You. I love this. It's that fast and furious rock. Great bass from Rick Savage. Terrific stuff. Then we get Satellite. Not so heavy, but it's very good track with some great guitar work. I don't know who did the solo on this, but I don't know if it was Pete or Steve, but it's a great solo. Then we get When the Walls Come Tumbling Down. Love Rick Allen's drumming on this. You'll remember this was a 15-year-old schoolboy, just a little bit older than me, and he was playing he was what, three years older than me, and he was playing drums in a rock band, making an album. It was hard to focus because we were freaked out when we knew he was not much older than us. Then we get my favourite track on this album, still remains a great track, Wasted. I love the riffs in this. They're dirty, they're heavy, and it's plug in and go rock. Rocks off, thumping bass line here from Rick Savage. Excellent track. It Don't Matter, more driving riffs from Pete Willis and Steve Clark. Excellent track. Answer to the Master. The riffs are kind of great. This is pure new wave of British heavy metal. Brilliant track. Overture, great solid rocker to end the album, and a great vocal from Joe. What can you say about this album? It was made by a very, very young band, and it still remains a great album. I love the rawness of this, but when they remixed it and remastered it and brought it out on that box set, you could really appreciate this album. It's a belter, absolute belter. That's what I think of it. But what are the old the reviewers, the professionals? Well, Steve Huey noted that On Through the Night established the band as one of the leading lights of the British heavy metal wave. Martin Popoff praised the album for being one of the most polished and savvy of the era. Rolling Stone's Dave Fickle reviewed the album favourably on the same wavelength, that it shows that not they only just respect their elders, but they have taken cues from the new wave peers. Sputnik Music staff reviewed it, noted that the middle-class common man image of the new wave of British heavy metal movement particularly played a part in making Def Leppard one of its leaders. He also says that the album can be categorised as a grower of an album, since the more superficial elements would not appeal to the mainstream initially, distracted some listeners from what actually was an incredibly tight musical and vocal performance. Spot on there. So AllMusic gave it the 3 and a bit stars. Collector's Guide to Heavy Metal gave it an 8 out of 10. Encyclopedia of Popular Music gave it a 3. And Sputnik gave it a 3 out of 5. How did the fans like it? Well, up here in the UK we loved it. And it got to number 15 in the album charts. The Americans did take a little bit longer to get used to them, and it only got to number 51. So let's have a look at the nuts and bolts of this one. Song quality. I think the song quality on this is absolutely brilliant. You've got to remember, these songs still are played today by people, and they have stood the test of time. Some great writing, some great playing on these, and I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 because the songs are really, really good. Production for 1980 is pretty good. It's raw. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. But when it was remastered, it really did bring this album into the limelight again. But 3 out of 5 for the time. Reception. Critics liked it, fans liked it, especially over here in the UK, so we're going to give that a 4 out of 5. Cover design is one of the great covers, one of the iconic covers of the 80s, so I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. So 2 full marks today for Def Leppard. So On Through the Night gives it a grand total of 17 out of 20. Great score. So let's bring on our next contestant. This is Diamond Head, of course. They were formed in 1976 in a town called Stourbridge in the West Midlands. Now, for those of you that are not from the UK that watch these shows, Stourbridge is sort of southwest. It's on the suburbs of just outside Birmingham, heading towards the southwest. They've been acknowledged. They sort of influenced bands like Metallica and Megadeth, of course. But the band was formed by Sean Harris, Brian Tatler, Colin Kimberley, and Duncan Scott. So their debut album Lightning to the Nations. It was actually recorded in 1979 but was released on the 3rd of October 1980. So this album is literally 42 years old this month. The band was Sean Harris on vocals, and he played rhythm guitar on one track, and we'll talk about that of course. Brian Tatler was lead guitar, Colin Kimberley on the bass, Duncan Scott on the drums, produced by Reg Fellows. So the first track on this one is the title track, Lightning to the Nations. Love the rawness. And great guitar from Brian Tatler. Very underrated guitar player is Brian. Great track. The Prince, love this track. Great rocker, some great solos. A brilliant solo from Brian. Sean Harris's vocals are terrific on that. Sucking My Love, it's got a great bass line from Colin Kimberley. Drives that song along. It's quite a long song. It's really good. Great vocals from Sean. Duncan Scott on the drums, brilliant. Brian Tatler with them great riffs of his. Terrific track. Then we get the brilliant Am I Evil. It's just, for the time it was ambitious, but it's a classic. Sean Harris plays the rhythm guitar on this. His vocals are brilliant on this. As far as I'm concerned, there's only one man that can sing this song, and he's Sean. He's the best singer of this. It's a great track. I've always loved it. I mean, Metallica have covered it, of course. Everyone's had a bash at this one. It just remains one of the great heavy metal songs of all time. Then we get Sweet and Innocent. This is hard raw metal. You could cut yourself on it. That's how raw it is. Brilliant stuff. It's Electric. Always a great track. Some solid riffs from Brian. A really good solo from him as well. I love that track. Then we get Helpless. Just love the rawness again of this one. I think it's an absolute stunner, this album's, regardless of what the critics say. I've always loved this album, and it is one of the most underrated heavy metal albums ever. There's not many reviews on it, I'm afraid. It didn't chart, which was a shame, but AllMusic gave it 4 stars. Collector's Guide gave it a 10 out of 10, and Sounds 3. So let's have a look at the nuts and bolts of this one. Song quality, very good songs. They were still in their infancy. I mean, Am I Evil is a classic. You know, you don't write many classics. So I'm going to give this an RTO 4 out of 5 ranking for that one. Production. The production on this album is brilliant for 1979. Remember, this was recorded in 1979. It's crisp, it's clear, it's raw. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. Reception. Now, regardless of that it didn't chart, I know a lot of people love this album and have got it and talk very affectionate of it. The critics liked it. So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. Cover design. It's not a very good cover at all. I could have done better than that because some of their other covers are pretty cool. You can just about see what it is. I think it was a rush job. And I'll give it a 3 out of 5. So the grand total for Lightning to the Nations is 16 out of 20. So Def Leppard do have it today. Oh dear, this is a tough one. I love both albums. to death. They've all got good merits. They've all got things they could have improved on. But for this one, I'm going to go with On Through the Night, because it's just an incredible album from a bunch of teenage lads. As much as I love the Def Diamond Head one, I think today I am going to give it to Def Leppard. Tough one, but I think my heart will always go towards On Through the Night. Okay, it's up to you now. Do you agree with me? Because lately you just haven't agreed with me at all. Which is great. This is what I like. I love it when you got guys go against what I think in this. And this one's basically your decision. You get my sort of telling you about it, and then you decide. And you know, since the concept of this came up, it's getting more popular, and it's great that you guys love to take part in this. I know one or two of you actually sit and listen to the albums before you make a decision, which is even better. So there we have it today. We've got another album artwork to do today, and we're going to do one of the best to worsts, and we're going to look at the live albums and studio albums of Captain Beefheart, because I had a lot of fun looking at these covers when I was doing the album ranking show. So join me for that very shortly. Bye for now, and don't forget, tonight it is live stream night. And also don't forget to subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss out on all the good stuff on the channel. I'll speak to you later. Bye for now.